It'll be around 10 to 15 minutes long and is not live, so you won't be able to ask any questions as you go. But if you do have any questions on what's covered in the webinar or how useful it's been, our contact details will be displayed on the last slide. Okay, so as you've tuned into a Surveillance Camera Commissioner webinar, I'm sure you know that that's me, Tony Porter. I was appointed by the Home Secretary, but I'm independent from government. The role was created to ensure that surveillance camera systems are used to support and protect communities, not spy on them. Now, to help with this, the Home Office published a Surveillance Camera Code of Practice in June 2013. You will probably know that it contains 12 guiding principles, which, if followed, will mean cameras are only ever used proportionately, transparently, and effectively. The Code of Practice enables the public and communities to hold users of surveillance camera systems to account, to make sure they're being used for their intended purpose and that they don't impinge on an individual's right to privacy. This can be summed up quite succinctly in the term surveillance by consent, which is explained in the code. Effectively, it means that the public consent to being observed where there is a pressing need and it is in their best interests, but this consent is fragile and there needs to be consultation about how, where and why cameras are deployed. So maintaining public confidence in the people your cameras are protecting is an incentive for complying with the code. It is my role to encourage compliance with the code, review the operation of the code, and advise on any amendments to how the code should develop. One way to ensure that the public can be confident in the systems that watch over them is for the operators of those systems and the systems themselves to meet minimum standards. And if you're doing this, it's something you should be singing from the rooftops about. Principle 8 in the code is the one that deals with standards, and there is a list of relevant standards on my website. Raising standards across the industry is something I am absolutely committed to, and I have a standards group looking at how we can simplify the standards framework and help organisations meet minimum standards. Last year, to help organisations see where they are in relation to compliance with the code, we launched an easy-to-use self-assessment tool. It's an interactive PDF that can be downloaded from my website and completed. As I just said, it enables organisations to show how closely they comply with the principles in the code, but it also helps them identify where they may need to make adjustments. It will help them draw up an action plan to set out what they may need to do if they're falling short. We've had feedback from organisations that have completed the self-assessment tool, that it's helped them to raise standards around the operation of their CCTV schemes. And where they've published the completed tool on the website, it's shown the public that they are serious about being transparent and open, that they are serious about their privacy, that they are serious about using CCTV responsibly. So, certification, what is it? A year on from self-assessment, we've gone one step further and are launching a third-party certification scheme. This scheme is open for any organisation that operates CCTV in a public space. As a first step, this process is focusing on those that have to show regard to the code, in particular local authorities. This is not to say that other organisations can't apply for certification. We welcome applicants from all sectors. Essentially, the scheme is an audit against the 12 guiding principles in the Surveillance Camera Code of Practice. In being certified, it visibly indicates compliance with the code and guiding principles, and for a relevant authority, demonstrates they are showing the code due regard, a statutory requirement. In turn, this will push up standards across the industry, showing the public that CCTV is used transparently, proportionately, and effectively. I said that this was a third-party certification scheme, and there are two UCAS accredited bodies who can carry out the certification process: the National Security Inspectorate and the Security Systems and Alarms Inspection Board. I am using UCAS accredited certification bodies to ensure that my certification process is completed to a high standard by bodies that have themselves been subjected to audit by UCAS. Certification is scheme specific. By that, I mean if you're operating more than one scheme that are independent of each other, such as a town centre scheme and a separate local housing scheme, they will need to be certified separately. That isn't to say that you can't apply for all your schemes to be certified at the same time. There are also 2 steps to certification. The first step, desktop certification, is aimed at organisations that are working hard to achieve full compliance with the code, but are aware that they may need more time to become fully compliant. The second step, full certification, is for organisations that are close to or fully compliant with the code. So step 1. The first step is desktop certification. This involves completing and submitting the self-assessment tool I mentioned earlier to one of the certification bodies, together with related evidence including evidence of your own code of practice and procedures manual, and any information sharing agreements with other agencies. Operational requirements and or privacy impact assessments should also be considered relevant if you have them. These do not need to be sent to the body, but should be made available on request. The completed form and documents will then be checked by the certification body, who may contact you for more information before recommending your organisations for Step 1 SCC certification. If you're successful, you'll receive a certificate from the Commissioner and will be able to use my certification mark on publicity materials, websites and so on to show you're certified against the code. This will be valid for 12 months. You'll receive a reminder to apply for full certification towards the end of the 12-month period. If you do not apply for full certification, you will no longer be able to use the certification mark. However, in exceptional cases, such as waiting for funding approval, etc., you may be able to reapply Step 1 desktop certification. Step 2. Step 2 is full certification against the code of practice. If you move from Step 1 to Step 2, certification is valid for 5 years. It is possible to apply for the second step without undergoing the desktop review, in which case it is valid for 5 years from the date your audit is successfully completed. This certification is subject to your own internal annual review of your system, but without any need to engage a certification body. Step 2 involves an auditor from one of the accredited certification bodies visiting your organisation's control room to audit the system, cameras and procedures, working with a checklist against the 12 guiding principles. This should take 1 day to complete. If you're considered to be fully compliant with the code, the auditor will produce a report for the Commissioner recommending full certification. In some cases, where schemes might be just failing, sure, you may be asked to make changes or put measures in place to address these issues before you achieve certification. If you're recommended for certification, you'll be issued with a certificate of compliance from the Commissioner, and it will be able to use throughout this period your certificate is valid for. At the end of this period, you'll need to reapply for certification. So what's in it for me? You may well be thinking this is all very well and good, but if I take my organisation through this process, what do we get out of it? And I think it's only right that an organisation would think that. I've already said that any organisation that successfully achieves certification will be awarded a certificate of compliance from the Surveillance Camera Commissioner, and will be able to use of the Commission certification mark on their website and other communications to indicate they comply with the code. But it's much more than that. It clearly demonstrates to the public and other organisations that you're complying with the code and using the surveillance camera systems as information gathered from them in the appropriate manner. In displaying the mark, by its very nature, it immediately shows your organisation is transparent. It demonstrates that your system is effective and complies with the relevant legislation and the Surveillance Camera Code of Practice. It makes it absolutely clear that you follow best practice and that the scheme that is certified as best in class, and that an independent professional third-party certification body has validated this. In addition, a list of organisations achieving certification will be published on the Surveillance Camera Commissioner's website. So, there are a number of reasons you should seriously consider my certification scheme. It demonstrates best practice to the communities you protect, shows you comply with all the relevant legislation, and sets you above other organisations in your sector. So, what next? There's more information on my website, so please visit it and really consider certification against the code. Get in touch with both certification bodies too, who will be able to give you information on how they carry out each step of the costs involved and the timescales. Well, that's it from me on certification. If you have any questions, then please email them in to me. My email address is on this slide. Thanks for tuning in.